something else I thought I would talk about, or I was thinking of, was going over the altars.
Hmm.
Because that's the altars in the Bible kind of tie a bunch of things together. Um, so why don't I say something on that, and you can interject stuff if you want.
All right.
Okay. So after Adam and Eve, after Adam broke the commandment God gave him, we really need to do videos on the original garden temple, Adam as a priest and stuff. So we'll have to do a Google Meet on that here pretty soon. Now that you're quarantined, we'll have to do that.
Sounds good.
So concerning these altars, though, and how they basically pinpoint everything. When Adam broke the commandment, God put an animal to death and made them skins, made them clothes of skins. And at that spot where that occurred, at that place where God did that, Adam built an altar. Okay? And from that time forward, this is where Adam would come, and we don't know what was prescribed for the people's worship, but Adam would come to worship the Lord at this altar. And this altar was outside the garden, and from the altar you could probably look and see cherubim guarding the door of the to get into the garden area. And and this is pretty much depicted in the tabernacle and temple floor plan layout, where the altar is, and then the entrance into the holy place then would be entering the garden, and it's guarded by cherubim. So there was this altar that Adam built long ago, and that altar was actually located at Mount Moriah, where the Garden of Eden was. And then as time went by and the flood occurred, and we'll need to make some videos on the flood because there's just a whole lot of material to go over there, the exact kind of boat Noah would have made and stuff. This is important. That's probably the part of the story that's the most fantastical in some presentations and stuff, and it's actually pretty down to earth once you look at it, right? So the flood's important. We'll have to go over it, but anyway, as you go on through the story, when the ark lands, it actually lands not where most people think. And most people think the ark landed. What do most people tell you?
They usually tell me Mount Ararat, or
Yeah.
they'll usually say Mount Ararat and usually point to a specific place, a specific mountain or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Mount Ararat. And the text in the King James, it says the mountains of Ararat. But actually, that's not the right way of looking at it. What you need to understand here, first of all, the word used for Ararat is from the Ugarit Sanskrit. It's a loan word. It's not Hebrew. It's not a Hebrew word. It's a loan word from a different language. and it's from the Ugaritic. And it's a word that means holy or sacred. That's what it means. And at some later time on down the road, like 700 BC or something, a long time after the time of Moses, there was a kingdom in Armenia called Urartu, which is actually the correct pronunciation of the word Urartu. Is that how it's spelled? Let me look it up. I ought to get that right. Something like that. Let me look it up here. I've got it in my books. The New Old Translation. And so here's an issue that comes up. What we could have in this verse, the mountains of Ararat, it could have originally said something different, mountains of something, and a priest updated it to mean Urartu, the kingdom of Urartu. So if a priestly update sometime in the 700s or BC, sometime when the kingdom of Urartu would have been a meaningful reference. If it was updated at that time, then that means the ark landed somewhere up in Armenia, in these mountains. But if the loan term from the Ugarit is Mosaic, if Moses deliberately used this loan term, then he's just trying to say sacred. You see, he's
Yeah.
he's using a term that just means sacred or holy. Okay, now here's the second part to this. It says mountains, plural, right?
Yeah.
Well, what that actually is what's known as an intensive plural. And there's a similar example in Psalm 133.
As the dew of Hermon, and as the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion.
That's how the King James translates it. And scholars will point out that that's actually not quite right. That's an intensive plural there, and it means how it should be read and understood in the Hebrew mind is that the dew descended upon the mountain Zion, the great mountain Zion. So it's an emphasis. It's an intensive plural. It's a Hebrew grammatical issue, but it's upon the mountain of Zion. So what you have then back in Genesis 8, when it says that the ark landed on the mountains of Ararat, it's actually saying on the sacred mountain of Eden. The ark landed on the sacred mountain of Eden, the holy hill, and that's Mount Zion.
That's very interesting. And I kind of see that as you put that together because, maybe someone would be questioning why didn't Moses say Mount Zion? Well, just like he referred to the land as the Edenic land, he expects the audience to know exactly what location he's talking about. Hence why he never specified this like Mount Zion.
Yes, and Moses also never really knew much about what Canaan looked like.
Oh, that's right. He
Um,
never was allowed to enter, right?
yeah, he was never in it himself. He spent most of his time wandering in the wilderness. Now, he received reports back from Joshua and so forth, but he just didn't know what was in the Holy Land, you know?
So you
And
just said that.
so he
So
said
real.
it landed on the sacred mountain of Eden. That's what he knew.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense. Huh, that's very interesting. And again, he didn't specify because, as you said, he didn't really know he wasn't there. And two, he he's making a reference, thinking that the audience, the reader knows where he's talking about, just like he refers to the land or the earth as the Edenic land and does not specify likewise here.
Well, he knows that Eden has a sacred mountain because the garden was there, you know.
Sure, yeah.
And really, when Noah's Ark landed on the sacred mountain, then when Noah got off and came down and built an altar, it would have been right in the vicinity of where Adam had built his altar. It would have been right in the same area. And of course, we know later when God called Abraham into Canaan, he built an altar at Shechem, and that's in Genesis 12:7. And then he went a little further south and built an altar between Bethel and Hai, Genesis 12:8. Then he traveled out of the land down into Egypt for a while. Then he came back up into the land and built an altar at Hebron, Genesis 13:18. And then finally he journeyed north, and in Genesis 2 he built his final altar on Mount Moriah, and that's right in the vicinity of Noah's altar and Adam's altar before him, and that marks the place where the garden was. So that's also the place where Christ died.
Yeah.
Right in that vicinity. So the whole Bible links together to that place, that sacred region.
Very interesting. And it makes total sense. Have everything happen in one sacred, significant location.
Yep. It's the best way of looking at it. There's people that think Eden was up in Armenia, and there's some that think Eden was over where the Tigris and Euphrates empty out into the Persian Gulf, over in Sumer. And if you place Eden in those places, in those areas, you just can't ever connect the Bible all together, because it all links together. And when you have Eden in the wrong place, you can't ever really make sense of the Bible, I think.
I'd agree. It seems like for such a significant place to put it in such a random location, why even have, I don't know, except for the imputation of Adam's sin, why have the garden mentioned at all if it's not doesn't have a significant location as well?
Yeah.
Makes a lot more sense to have it all in the sacred land, sacred region.